Hi, everybody. Pastor Dave here. I got an exciting testimony I want you to hear today. This is Marty, Rector, longtime member of Westside. He's going to tell you a story today. He's been going through a lot of things recently. You hear all about it, but really today we want you to hear about God's faithfulness in the midst of a real hard journey. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching this. Enjoy, and I hope that God speaks to your heart through this. All right, so Marty, let's just talk a little bit. Tell us your background here at Westside, and let me throw it to you for that.
We moved here in 1989, Memorial Weekend, and immediately started attending Westside. My brother and his wife, Byron and Michelle, were already attending, so we just fit right in and just started attending right out of the gate when we moved, and been involved in the church ever since. And our ministry primarily, Dan and I have primarily been involved with youth ministries primarily 30-some years. And then after that, we had about 8 years of single ministries and about 3 or 4 different small groups, church board, and just a variety of different things. So when we came here, we definitely were involved. Our kids were involved in teens, NYCs, all those kinds of things. And so we have been a part of the church from the beginning, believing that's the right thing to do. Deanne herself has always been involved with teens. And even at Brownsburg High School, where she worked, she was a co-coordinator for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And in so doing, she not only did that, but she also coordinated Samaritan's Purse boxes.
Wow.
And her last year that she was there, she had probably 250 plus boxes that they had put together with her leadership.
Wow.
So she is very involved with students, and even today, even has a missionary that contacts her from time to time that was where she was an influence in his life.
Yeah, I know when we first started here, my kids were in youth group, and she was on the youth staff then, so yeah. She affected my kids' life. And you were on the board when I was elected pastor here, so you guys have been heavily involved for all kinds of things.
So her, and her strength, per Gary Gerstenberger, was she was really good at seeking out that teenager that was in the corner. Yeah. She was excellent at drawing them out, making acquaintances, and she did the same thing at Brownsburg. She'd go in the cafeteria and she'd start talking to those kids, that kid in the corner, and trying to build those relationships.
Great skill. Yeah. All right, so tell us what happened in February.
What happened was, let's go back 2018 real quickly. We retired of all things, and she was diagnosed with dementia. And in this case, dementia is not a linear digression. It is a plateau. You digress, plateau, digress, plateau. And from that point to February, it was continuing. And even back in last fall, we were still traveling. We went on a trip. And then even in December, we did one of our favorite things. We went to the Blue Gate Theater up in Shipshewana and took in a concert, even around Christmas. Yeah. But come February, what happened was we were even at WOW on Monday night I won't get into all the details, but there was a trigger. And a lot of times there's a trigger that will put you into that next level.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And in this particular case, there was one. And so by Friday, she was admitted to ER and ended up going into Danville Rehab with a plan of care to basically go through a whole evaluation of the therapies, psych evaluation, neurology evaluation, all those things, and then with the outcome to rebalance the meds, which is a challenge in and of itself, because what it is, you have to change the meds and then wait a week or two, not a few days, and then change it again. And so fortunately, she did pretty well, and come March 20, we were going to be released to come back home. But at that point, she had to digress at a pretty rapid rate. And so she was to come home on March the 20th, and lo and behold, if she didn't fall and break her hip. And so now we're back into the rehab for the hip thing, and then they're continuing to monitor for the dementia as well, and still getting physical therapies and the speech therapies and all those kinds of things. And then at the end of April, she was allowed to come home. Okay, and so it was challenging enough. I mean, it was in the sense that how would I say this? She had declined at a level where she could no longer function. And as we just talked about, there's 2 modes. You're either coherent or anxious. And in her particular case, her level of dementia, her anxiety is very high. Matter of fact, some of the health professionals say it's the highest they've seen.
Oh.
So she can really get off the wall pretty quickly.
Right. Now I know that for you, it was very important for you to bring her home and to take care of her. Assuming right out of like your vow, sickness and in health, to death do you part, that sort of thing. Tell us maybe a little bit about that. Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of it is that, as we mentioned to you before, our marriage vows became a living reality.
Yeah.
It was no longer a mantra, a thing to do or whatever. That death to us until we part thing is very real.
Right.
And so you're living it every day. And especially when you're sitting there let me give you the schedule of what happens today.
All right.
The meds are very structured. And when I give her meds at 8:30, within 20 minutes, she's fine. To the point that you even see us in church.
Yeah.
She may be confused, but she's very calm.
Right.
For a long time, by 4 o'clock, that would diminish to anxiety, and she'd be anxious until 8:30 at night.
Right.
Now, here's the thing: there are no meds for that. There are, but they're given at 8:30 because what they're going to do is help you go to sleep.
So she got 4 hours of nothing.
4 hours of nothing.
Okay.
And so, and you don't want to give them too early, then everybody's going to be up all night.
Right.
And so you want to give her at 8:30 or 9 so she sleeps all night.
Right.
So you're going to sit there for 4 hours and watch her to make sure she doesn't hurt herself. She doesn't want to read, to watch TV, go for drives, go for a walk, nothing. If you're going to do any of those things, you do it prior to that anxiety kicking in.
Right.
And so you're sitting there and even watching TV. The other night we tried to watch a show. I stopped and started that show 10 times before it was over.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong learner. I love books.
Oh, yeah.
The last book I read was Fearless by Max Lucado. It took me 2 months to read.
Yeah.
I gave up on reading books. So I've gone to more short snippets of things, iPods, and studying a topic and reading articles and following certain people and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get interrupted in those 4 hours 100 times.
Right.
And so I've had to come up with things. But at the same time, you're sitting there and you're watching your wife of now 49 years just go off. And so nothing to do but sit there, make sure she doesn't hurt herself or tear up the place or something else.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard. I mean, you're sitting there and you are hopeless.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, what do you pray for?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what have you prayed for? That's a great question.
Well, there's really two alternatives, really. Is Lord, heal her. That'd be great.
Yeah,
heal her tomorrow, and we're going to go a 2-week road trip right now. Or the other one is ultimately heal her.
Sure.
Or something in between. So my prayer has been more along the line of, my Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. The Lord is my shepherd. Oh, by the way, Jesus, I read that you talk to the Father on my behalf when I don't have the words. You guys work it out and let me know.
Yeah.
Because it has to be thy will from that standpoint. He has to talk to the Father and they have to give us something in the future. And I don't know what that is at this point.
Yeah. Well, speaking of this point, where are you in this journey presently? Where are you? Everything?
Well, that's beginning to decline. Now, the good part about all of this is that in February, we were semi-prepared. I had all the plans in place, but wasn't ready for this next level. And so I had everything planned at the 10,000-foot level, but when it's game time, you're at the 1,000-foot level, then it changes everything. And the first thing I saw was the Lord provided a good lawyer, financial planner, healthcare providers, long-term care providers, all these people to come along and advise. At some point, Deanne will go into long-term care permanently. And this time I'm ready. I'm ready for all that. All those things are in place better than they were before.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are with that. At the same time, I'm beginning to see that decline where the anxiety was kicking in at 4. It's now kicking in as early as noon. She will go almost 8 hours, even with the meds.
Oh, wow.
And so right now we're getting as much as 4.5 hours of coherency, and then it starts to decline from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that, like, even right now to be here, there's someone at the house kind of taking care of her. So you've got a little bit of support happening.
That's the other thing that's happened. Sycamore Services comes on Tuesdays to watch her, so it gives me a time to run errands, go to appointments for myself, those kinds of things. The other thing that we'll be doing is I can check her back into Danville Rehab for respite care. It's like Reno long-term care, and so I can put her in there for 2 days, which we've already tried, and then this coming fall, I'm going to take some time off and go visit some family and so on.
What's a blessing to have that, yeah.
It is. So those things again, back in February, I didn't even know were available. Today, I know they're available, able to take advantage of those, and they have helped.
God's provision and through all that medical care has just been off the charts,
And of course, I've read everything dementia. It's my nature to research everything.
Yeah, everything.
And I follow Dementia Care Blazers. She's a geriatric psychologist, and she's been a great source. She advises not so much the patients, but she advises the caregivers.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Here's the statistic. The group that's most likely to get dementia are caregivers of dementia patients.
Really?
Because to take care of someone like her or your loved one absolutely wears you out.
Imagine so. Yeah.
And so then if a person is not eating properly, exercising, reading, not doing those things, that's the preventative for all that.
I gotcha.
Then you're in trouble.
I gotcha. So you got to manage all that somehow.
You got to manage all that. And here's the other side of that. In working with my estate planning, my state lawyer, she said that 60-some% of the caregivers will pass before their spouse does.
Really? Because of all these issues you've spoken about?
Because of all these issues, same thing.
My goodness.
And so my estate plan not only takes care of what happens to us or myself when she passes, but what happens if I go in the nursing home first, or if I pass first?
Okay.
What happens?
Yeah.
So
that's a lot of heavy stuff to think about.
Well, the good news, all these professionals came along and said, here's how we're going to tweak these. We didn't have to redo everything. We just tweaked some things to make it happen.
Okay.
So I've got a estate plan, financial plan, healthcare plan, long-term care plan. All these things are in motion.
You got to give a little piece, if there's any to be found, right?
Well, in February, I had no clue of any of this. It wasn't there.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was there, but I just didn't know about all these things.
Right.
And so that in itself has brought peace. So anyway, that's kind of where we are.
What about some of the challenges? I imagine you've already mentioned a few, but what are some of the current challenges?
The biggest challenges is really just, I mean, it's 7 days a week at this point, between the coherency and the incoherency. That's the challenge in and of itself.
Yeah.
And it's your own mind. I mean, I would say then what it begins to do is wear on you spiritually if you're not ready.
Okay.
The challenge that I ran into, first of all, what I've always considered to be the benefit of being a Christian is faith, hope, and love. We see that in Scripture. Faith, not a problem. If I haven't figured that out by now, I absolutely believe in Jesus Christ, period. Believe He saves me and so on. Love, got that down. My love for my wife, my church, the people, that's there. That's not a problem. Hope, oh my goodness. Your hope will be challenged at the very core of your being.
Okay.
And it was for me too.
Sure.
Because you're sitting there with your wife, you've got 4, 5, 6 hours before you go to bed, or her next meds.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Not one thing.
Wow.
And it actually it wears on even the caregivers.
Sure, I can imagine so. My goodness.
So it's not easy, and a lot of times I'll be out and about, and the caregivers will text me or call me or whatever. So that's the challenge, and so you're sitting there, and like I say, you don't know what to pray for. How do you pray for that? And then you sit there and you see nothing happening.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things that has happened is that usually by 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I get up. She has to get up, take care of her. I put her back to bed. I can't go back to bed because me being in there, she knows I'm in there. So I get her situated. I turn on some white noise, darken the room, and I leave, and she'll sleep another 2 hours. That has become Marty time.
Okay. All right.
So I fire up the coffee pot, get out my Bible, or in my case, my iPad, and I start reading.
Okay.
And of all things, about 100 days ago, because I just looked, 100 days ago, I've been using the Bible app and going through the Bible.
Right.
My preference is to read chapter by chapter. I usually follow along with you, but in this particular case, I'm reading through the Bible. And what I like about it is that it hits the Old Testament and the New Testament, and like today, there was a Psalm. Mm-hmm. And I have found that to be, I look forward to it. Mm-hmm. And the nice part, I've had my rest because I go to bed when she goes to bed, and I get up when she is ready to get up. Mm-hmm. So I've slept 6-7 hours hard. So I'm up and ready to go. Okay. And I have found that time to be alone with the Lord is a blessing.
Yeah.
That's where my hope and strength is renewed. Mm-hmm. And especially when I'm looking at people, for example, the Israelites that you've been preaching about. Mm-hmm. They have all these things happening around them. They have all these miracles. They see everything that God is doing. But the one thing that was missing was that promised land, and they lost the vision of that particular mm-hmm. hope. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way if you're not careful with yourself. You have all these things. You see all of God's provisions of everything He's provided, mm-hmm. but yet that hope of what is going to happen to her, it's not clear. Yeah. And so you have to fix your eyes on Jesus, or you'll be just like the Israelites.
Yeah, because what else are we going to look at? Yeah, that's even more defeating, sure.
I heard a statement years ago, and I learned this professionally. And being in project management, one of the things I struggled with was change management. And when you're in the middle of something, it's very challenging, okay? Especially something like this. And I heard a statement years ago, and I think about it a lot, especially when in my work world. And the statement is this: when you're halfway in the middle of the desert, talking about the Israelites, when you're halfway in the middle of the desert, slavery begins to look pretty good.
Wow. All right.
Think about that. Right. Think about that in your terms of your work, the things you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to do around the church, in your personal life, and especially in my personal life. I'm halfway in the middle of the desert. Yeah. In this case, the only promised land I have is heaven. Yeah. But somewhere between now and then is stuff. Yeah. And so you have to keep your hope focused on Jesus the whole time.
Yeah, that heavenly calling.
Or all of a sudden you're going to look back and think, boy, sure good. I wish it was like that, still today. Right. But it's not. It can't come. In this case, it can't come back. Yeah. Wow. And so you got to keep your eyes focused. But that's a good one to remember. When you're halfway in the middle of the desert,
I might use that. That's good.
Slavery looks really good.
That's really good. So you told me before too that in James it says, consider it joy when you struggle. And you said you just kind of lingered in that text.
It was. My preference for study has always been to take a chapter like James, and of all things, for whatever reason, I know the reason, back in December, I was stuck on James 1. I mean, we're talking about Christmas and everything else in that time period, and I'm stuck on James, and it says, pray without wavering. And my process was to always read Scripture and understand it and to indwell it and to pray about it. And I did that for almost a whole month. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, if that hasn't been priceless, because you need that strength, you need that endurance. And that thing about wavering, I'm not questioning God at all. Matter of fact, I give up on asking why. Because first of all, you're not going to get an answer. Second of all, the answer is out there. It's in that hope thing that I just talked about. Mm-hmm. But here's the other part of that, and here's the ultimate gift of being a Christian: is faith, hope, and love. You get those right. What happens is you begin to feel that deep peace in the midst of the storm. Mm-hmm. And that's where my quiet time in the morning comes in. Just like this morning, I just finished reading the Scriptures. I was praying. I went out on my back porch with my cup of coffee. And all of a sudden you just feel that deep peace inside that just, it makes no sense to the world. Right. How can you go through all this or whatever you're going through and have a deep peace in your life? Mm-hmm. It's only through Jesus. And staying focused, bulldog focused on what he has.
The Bible says it's peace that surpasses like our understanding. We can't get it.
Right.
And that's only, because what you're going through is difficult. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So last question I have for you. What can our church family do for you? What can church family do for you?
Well, one thing that people always want to do is bring meals, but don't do that. Here's why. One, I'm on a low carb thing, and I've lost 25 pounds to keep my health up.
Good.